So I know Amazon has a lot of money, but apparently they're thinking about like just being able to feed all of Australia for the next couple years with their filming in it's either Australia or New Zealand. I think it's Australia for the for their Lord of the Rings series. Well, I bring that up because they are spending quite a bit of money to film there. And not just film there, but the budget for this Lord of the Rings series is said to be for the first season alone. This isn't like the first 5 seasons or whatever. The first season alone of Amazon's Lord of the Rings series is scheduled to be over $450 million in its budget, which I'm just going, are you nuts? Like, I know you have a lot of money, Amazon, and you want to get in a streaming game and prove you're a big boy just like everybody else. That's why you have Invincible, have, I was about to say The Lost Boys, but it's not that, The Boys. And I know you have a lot riding on this, but $500 million for one season, a season of TV. That doesn't even include that doesn't include them getting the rights from the Tolkien estate, which I'm sure also costs them quite a pretty penny. Sure, this better be the best frickin' show that's ever showed, because almost $500 million. Are you nuts?
Yeah, is it, have we confirmed on like the content? Like, are they really just doing like the Fellowship, Two Towers,
No.
and Return, or are
It's
they
like,
doing
it's either
Silmarillion?
it's either
Silmarillion.
hundreds or thousands of years before Hobbit.
Okay,
It's
so
like the
yeah, so
first
it's
age.
Okay,
I don't think it's the Silmarillion, but it's set in Middle Earth, obviously. It's
yeah.
very much prequel.
See, like to me that's warranted, because I don't know how much they spent to make the Lord of the Rings movies, but a lot has changed since then. And honestly, you're introducing a bunch of new characters, and the siege is going to be very CGI heavy. As long as it's not as bouncy and weird as the Hobbit films, I think to me this is warranted, because that to me, I see 450 million. That to me that says CGI budget is huge. Not necessarily just, and like locations budget and miniatures, and you know what I mean?
That's the thing, is I don't think CGI want to see that. I think of scale. Like, do we
Yeah.
need to build an actual Rivendell again, or wherever else? Like, how big are our props and everything else? Like, they had a full-size Rivendell for interior shots and everything else, but then they also had the miniatures that you brought up. I would like them to see miniatures come back. I like physical props. I'm still kind of worried about this show. Like, I know they've got a lot of big creative names in this, but one, not really having any actors that we recognize the names could either be really good or really bad, because we're not going to associate them with something else. Like Mads Mikkelsen, as much as I like him, I just see Mads Mikkelsen as opposed to, I don't know, a character that really just blends in. But you do kind of need at least one or two names to draw people in. Lord of the Rings is a big enough name by itself. However, there's been some articles and some interviews in the past, just in the early stages of creative development, that have raised some red flags, for me personally at least, of sounding more like they're interested in doing a Game of Thrones-esque show set in the Lord of the Rings world, as opposed to doing an actual Lord of the Rings type show. You're like, well, what's the difference? They're both fantasy series. One is definitely much more explicit in their content. Game of Thrones is targeted for an adult audience. Lord of the Rings never was. It was a kid's book first with The Hobbit, and then a teenage audience for Lord of the Rings. But kids could still read Lord of the Rings. There's also, it wasn't a huge thing like it was with the Narnia books, but there is still quite a bit of religious undertones in all
Mhm.
Lord of the Rings because Tolkien was a religious person, as was Lewis. They were drinking buddies. I don't think Prime will dive into that, and that's such a
Yeah.
key aspect of Lord of the Rings, and that's not a thing present in Game of Thrones. Again, they're very, very different. Game of Thrones is good for what it is, for 6 seasons at least. Lord of the Rings is great for what it is, but they are not the same, and I do worry, and I've worried this for a while, that Amazon is just looking at this going, all right, this is a big recognizable IP that we can fit into the mold that is Game of Thrones, as opposed to basically having free reign of creative control while still
Hmm.
honoring the legacy of Tolkien. Am I being too pessimistic, or you kind of have the
No,
same concerns, Josh?
I'm the same concern, especially like if they're just saying this is the in the first age of Lord of the Ring of Middle Earth, like they're not like explicitly referencing any of the books. It's kind of like how do you write a story without any of the intent of the original author? Like that doesn't make sense to me. Real quick for comparison, Return of the King's budget in total was 94 million.
How much was it after inflation, though?
I don't know, but I mean it's. Hold on,
I'd probably say that's maybe 130, 150 now.
but that's
Yeah, that's
still
still.
not that's still a fraction of what Amazon's dumping into
Now,
this. So
granted, a season of TV is a longer stretch of time. Like Falcon Winter Soldier,
true.
even though it's 6 episodes, that's 6 hours. That's almost 3 times the length of your average movie length. So time is definitely a factor. But that's the thing is with TV shows. Why do you think shows like Arrow or Smallville or any other show uses the same set over and over again? It's so that they can save money, but also just reusing those sets to keep a centralized story in one location as opposed to bouncing all over the place like National Treasure 2 did.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I get that they want to they really want this to be the anchor. They want this to be their Mandalorian, which I get.
Hmm.
But I guess it's still difficult though because Amazon is in a different position than Disney or Netflix or HBO Max of they don't have money issues. They rule the world basically. If honestly, if Amazon really really wanted to and there wasn't any like federal regulations or anything, they probably actually could buy up one of the other main streaming services. Not saying they could buy
Hmm.
all of them, but if Amazon wanted to, they could probably buy HBO Max or buy Disney Plus. That's how much power they have. So they can flex this muscle. I'm not saying they should, though, is the thing.
Yeah. Mm.
Quantity and quality would be preferred as opposed to how much money you're spending on this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, it's what I think the hard thing too is the original Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings is so well done and it's so highly revered.
It's
It's gonna be
perfect.
hard. Yeah, it's hard to top that.